everyone. Today I get to interview Mandy Mikulencak, and I checked. I am saying her name right. She's Czechoslovakian, and I was kind of scared, but I practiced it a couple times. So, anyway, she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I got it right. Her latest book, this is her second book, and it's called The Last Suppers, and it's about a woman who feeds death row inmates their last supper. But it's so much more than that. I mean, that's just like the beginning premise of the book, but I cannot wait to talk to her. This book came out at the end of December, and I'm seeing it all over the place. And I was just thrilled when she said she would let me talk to her, be interviewed by me. I was thrilled, really. I can't thank her enough. So, anyway, here is Mandy.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be speaking with author Mandy Mikulencak, and we're going to be talking about her newest book that just came out in December called The Last Suppers. Thank you for talking with me today, Mandy.
Oh, I'm excited to do it.
I've been seeing this book like all over Instagram. I've like become buddies with these book clubs and book reviewers, and when I saw it, I was like, I definitely want to read this, and it did not disappoint. This was such a great story. I loved it, and I know everybody else is too. So I'm not the only one.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, and I was thinking because I'm a homeschooling mom, and I was trying to think, because what I love are historical fiction books that find these stories, and then in the story you learn so much history. And then I was thinking, high school, and I'm like, yeah, I think high school kids could read it, right?
Oh, I think so. I mean, it covers subject matters that we're still talking about today. So,
Right.
I think they're exposed to those kind of hard themes of
I do.
racism and poverty, and so I think it's applicable to very mature teens and preteens as well.
Yeah, and I do find, because I do have a son that's 18, he's a senior, and he, because of social media and Twitter, it amazes me that, how political he is. Because that's what kids talk about now. And they do have opinions. And it's like, I think back to when I was 17 and 18, I didn't know, and, we didn't talk about political stuff like he does. But it's out there, and, these kids are talking about it. And I talked a lot with him about this book, and it was just interesting to always get his opinion because, they do have opinions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, the ideas of social justice, those are timely. And
very timely.
I find that age has just not made a difference in the readership.
Well, and especially, we are talking, right after a very horrific accident in Florida, and, the death row, death sentence topic is coming up again and again for these kind of crimes. And, he always thinks that, the cost, he hates the cost. And, he's always like, oh, it costs so much to get them there. I wish it didn't cost so much, and, I wish it was an easier process. But this takes place back in the 1950s, and I don't even know. I was going to look it up, and then I was like, well, you probably know. I'll just ask you, when did the death penalty start becoming in the state of Louisiana? Was this at the beginning in the 1930s, or, when did it start becoming legal?
Oh, it was, oh my gosh, into the 1800s at some point. It's just the method that has changed. And it was well until I wanted to say 1990 that they switched over to lethal injection. So Louisiana is one of a few states, that have quite a few people on death row and have stayed with the electric chair as an execution method for many, many years.
Yeah, and I did think that. I was thinking, it was probably the method, because I'm sure when it was in the very beginning, the methods were a little bit extreme, but, there's always a controversy. Every time we have an election, there's death penalty controversy, and, and I don't know, over the years, my opinion probably has changed a lot during raising kids and everything. But
I do. I think that's the same for readers. I think you go back and forth throughout your lifetime on issues like this. And, Sister Helen Prejean. I have to remember how to pronounce that, given my difficult last name.
Right.
Dead Men Walking. She did quite a bit. To bring, of
Yeah.
course, in a nonfiction way, the public's attention to the idea of the death penalty, and of course, she's opposed to it. And so the gentleman at the heart of that story, he was executed with an electric chair, and so. It's something that we're all very cognizant of. It's in the public consciousness. So it's not a new topic. It's just how we talk about it. And, I heard an interview with her once that she said that art, whether it's, fiction or artwork or opera, in fact, there's an opera based on her book now.
Right.
And that's a different way to continue the conversation. Book clubs have really loved the title, this book, because it leads them down some uncomfortable paths of discussion. So they talk about the plot and the characters, but also about the underlying issues.
Yeah, and this isn't the only one. We have racism in here. That's kind of the beauty of this book is like it doesn't just deal with one topic. We're dealing in the 1930s to 1950s, which racism was huge in the South. We were, the Ku Klux Klan, which I learned so much more about. I always think I know a lot because I have homeschooled my children and I do teach it, but there's always another angle. I'm always finding different angles, and this has a completely different angle, that I did not know about. And, especially not that it wasn't secret, but I guess I didn't realize how secret at some points.
Yes, and institutionalized, in terms of the penal system, and and that's I think why it was so ingrained, because it was it was just something that was part of our history, and it was just taken for granted. In fact, the African American supporting character Dot. The idea of the Klan to her was just a part of her upbringing since she was a child. So, the fear associated with the Klan. And so what I hope readers get from this is that it was always a backdrop for these people's lives, and what I hope I've done is, present, a story of some flawed characters with these issues as a backdrop. I don't want to hit people over the head,
right.
Because I didn't start out to write an issues book.
Right.
The book came about in a very, normal way. A friend of mine had mentioned that she read about a Texas death row inmate who only asked for Frosted Flakes and milk for his last meal. And, that was a haunting image to me. And I started thinking, it's like, well, what goes into the psychology of those requests? And my next thought was, well, what happens if a prison cook becomes obsessed with preparing meaningful last meals? And the story grew from there, and then the social justice and other aspects of the story just, came up naturally as I was telling these character stories.
Well, and because you're dealing in the South, I'm from Pennsylvania. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, and so coming from a northern state, whenever I read anything about the southern states going through this, it's so removed. It's so weird, how you can live in the same country, and yet the way we were taught anything, it was so glossed over that when I read books and realize, like you said before, that this is a part of their everyday life, it's hard. My grandparents were alive during this time. They never talked about, it was so a not issue for us. It's unbelievable. You feel like you're in a different country and you're not,
And now our history, the conversation has come back around again, and we talk now about white nationalism and
right.
The America First movement, and so we're not talking about the Klan per se. It
Mm-hmm.
looks different, and I think it evolves to meet the times. And I think that too is why there's some popularity around this book, because we're using a different decade in multiple decades in our history to talk about a current problem.
Absolutely. And, sometimes when I was telling you about my son, he will bring it up. He's very passionate about, different topics. And I'll say to him, this is amazing that we're still talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 53 and I'm are we still talking about, it just is when you feel I want to get past it, but it just comes up in different forms, in a different way. And the conversation has to, it can't just die. We have to, keep dealing with it and figuring it out as a country. So it's so very relevant, and I like knowing the history. I mean, because then you kind of understand why it isn't dying in a way. I think because
Right.
it is such a personal topic, I guess. And like I said, what I loved about it is just because I've never read anything and quite like this book, and I think everybody will feel that way when they read it, and that's that's the point. I want everybody to read this book because let's talk about the main character, Ginny. I loved her. I mean, of course, she, the growth that she had to do and dealing with her childhood, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, and so I'm trying to talk around that because we don't do spoilers. But I love the growth from how you introduced her until the end of the book and, who she becomes. I just, my heart was with her.
And, I tried to, without spoilers, place her in this prison from the time she was a child as the daughter of a guard. So she's very connected to that whole system in a very personal way. And, earlier I said how much I like to write flawed characters and somewhat broken characters. And I would put Jenny in that category. And I think she's not even aware how her past is influencing her future actions and her feelings and this obsession with preparing the most meaningful last meals. And so, what I'm hoping in the trajectory of the story is that we see Jenny finally facing her childhood and past and around this very complicated issue.
Yeah, and I did not see a lot of that coming. Just
Good. That's what I was hoping. There are definitely some surprises and twists and turns toward the end.
Yes, and it does. It does start taking like these turns, and it's it's kind of what gets you so into. I thought it was just at a great part in the book where sometimes the book can start dragging, and yours just kept picking up, and it was like, oh my goodness, oh my.
Well, it's funny. What I ended up, and I didn't start out to do this, but what I ended up kind of packing into this story, because one reviewer said it's a love story, and I'm thinking, well, that's really interesting because it's set in the most desolate, dehumanizing place, and this isn't a spoiler, of course, but Jenny starts a relationship with the warden who is as old as her father would be, and some readers are not very happy about that. They don't agree with that. But I'm thinking these people find themselves in this environment. They don't have a life outside of the prison system. And I just felt that it was natural that they would be drawn together because they had Ginny's father in common.
Yeah.
And that shared history. And also, a friend of mine, she's great. She's like, we don't choose who we love. And so that's what I really wanted to show is there's these multiple layers. It's about their personal lives, it's about their work lives, and it's about their past, and about some really difficult decisions they made that you and I may not agree with.
Right, absolutely. And I did buy into it, just so you know. Like, I did see the sweetness of it because, just like you said, like, you can't help who you fall in love with, and you can say, well, she has daddy issues, and you're like, yeah.
Exactly. That's part of her problem in her past. And, and you're thrown into the paths of people, and you don't know how they're going to affect your life until way down the line.
Right. And so I was like, well, people will always say that. And in her case, it's like, yes, she does. And that's the point, and that's what her journey is, to find that out. And, and it is a journey, and it is great.
Right. And, and that's why I'm sure with other authors you've talked to, I'm unapologetic for the themes in the book and what happens. It's a work of fiction. And what I hope it does is it's thought-provoking, and people see it for what it is, which is, I hope, a work of art that illuminates real-life issues. And so I'm fine. I've always tell people when I'm speaking at book clubs and book events that I don't mind when I get really bad reviews. I mean, one woman said she threw her Kindle against the wall, which is fine because I got a reaction. So if people feel very strongly one way or the other, I know that I've hit a nerve, and I think I've done my job then. So I don't take things really personally.
Yeah, and you did like I said, you tackled some tough subjects, and I've learned, like, I want everybody to know, like, you learn things, okay? The research that you did for this, it's always like, when I'm reading a historical fiction book like this, I love how you weave it in. It's like, it's not obvious. It's not like, okay, I'm going to give you this history lesson now and this is what happened, but it's always in there and you find it and you find these nuggets that I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't really think about that for that time, and I like going back. I'm a history person. I love thinking about, different time periods and I thought you stuck just the right amount of nuggets in there that placed us there and let those characters be that believable. So I really
I'm
appreciate
glad to hear that because I don't want it to be a history lesson.
Right.
I want people to feel a little bit uncomfortable and to think about different sides of things. Like Sister Helen, in the beginning, she said she was so floored about the vehemence felt by the victim's family. They couldn't see how she had compassion for these monsters. And so she even admitted that she probably should have done more work around the victim side. But what she was trying to tell people is that the perpetrators have families too. So whether whichever way you feel about the death penalty and the perpetrator, families' lives are forever affected on both sides. And, that idea of compassion is going to rub people the wrong way, and other people will see it for what it is that there's this flawed character who is trying to see the humanity in even these most despicable people.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that, but I can see how other people did. But I could see that, being there and working there, how you could have compassion. So I didn't have a hard time with that, but I could see how, other people in different circumstances may have a problem with that. But I love that she tried to, somehow make them human by giving, wanting to make their last moments, either bittersweet and sometimes it failed on her too, but, her intentions were what was good about, what was great about it. And I was thinking, I saw an interview that you did and, you were talking about the last meals and how significant it is for them because, other people, we don't know our last meal. And, it brought up my mom died of cancer and I tried to make a last meal for her. And, I brought in dinner from her favorite restaurant, right? I was like, I'm going to, I made this big thing and it didn't work. She was too sick. It was lost on, and then I was like, why did I think of that before she got that? But you don't know, because you don't know. That's why.
No, and that's why, and the public has such a fascination with these meals. I mean, there are so many photo essays, really brilliant ones, on the actual last meal request and lots of nonfiction books. But I think it almost becomes a parlor game. Like you and I would say, well, what would your last meal be? But we're thinking in terms of favorite foods and favorite tastes, whereas someone facing imminent death is thinking about completely different things. And, in my research, I was finding a lot of times it's tied to memory and loss, things that they will never have again. And so when I was doing research for the foods in that time period, that's what I was looking for, those kind of comfort foods that a mother or grandmother might have made when the inmate was a small child.
Right. Well, that's the part, the story is so endearing in that way. And that's why I think everybody, I don't think that it was too much history. I think that the story itself was just brilliant. I mean, I loved it. And I'm so happy that I got to read it. You have no idea.
Well, thank you so much.
I finish books like these and I'm like, oh, yes. A good book just makes me so happy.
I think, Michelle, I'm just going to keep calling you on those days that I get really bad reviews just to hear you say these nice things and you'll pump me up again.
Well, I love that. Okay, so I went on to Amazon and I saw this was your second book. So your first book, Burn Girl, I actually think I had heard of it, and I didn't get to find out. What year did that come out?
2015.
Okay. I actually feel like sometimes I go back and I'm like, oh, I've heard it. Somewhere in my brain, I feel like I've heard of it. But so this was 2015, so it's like, are you working on something else? Do you have something else coming out, or, how's that working?
Absolutely. So Kensington, the publisher of The Last Suppers, had a 2-book deal with me. So the second book, called Forgiveness Road, will be out next March. And so that's all taken care of. So the book that I'm writing right now probably wouldn't see the light of day until 2020. So that kind of messes with an author's brain. You're working on several different things at one time, promoting the book that's out, looking at covers and things for the book that's going to come out next year. And then, and they say you just have to keep writing, stop reading reviews, don't go online. Right. Don't pay attention to what you know on social media. Just keep your butt in the chair and keep writing. And so that's what I
do believe. I heard somebody give that advice too. What should I do or something like, what should I do about my first book and making it like a bestseller? And they were like, write your second book. Stop paying attention to the first book. Like
exactly.
Keep going with what you're doing.
Absolutely. You put it out in the world, and there's no way you can do anything after that fact. You cannot shape what reviewers will think or what readers will think. You just have to feel confident that you created the piece that you wanted to create. You told the story you wanted to tell, and then you go on to tell the next story.
Yeah. And then you can just put your whole brain into writing. But I can't believe, that is the latest I've heard of a book, like 2020. That to me, it's like 2020. That sounds so far. It's not that far away, but it sounds so far away. In the book world, it really, really isn't that far away because there is so much that goes into it. But who did you publish Burn Girl with?
Albert Whitman and Company.
Okay.
So Albert Whitman is a children's and young adult publisher who did the Boxcar children's books. So that's what they're famous for.
Yes. I've heard that, of course.
Yeah. But in all the books, past and present books, and my future books, one thing that you'll see is that I don't write really happy stories. Again, I'm really attracted to flawed characters and the brokenness in them. So Burn Girl was about a teen who was disfigured in a meth lab explosion. And so, there's themes of drug abuse and homelessness and suicide, so they're heavy topics. And the next book that I'm writing for Kensington is about a girl in 1960s Mississippi who kills her father because he's abused her for many, many years, and she's trying to protect her baby sisters. So again, not happy subjects, but what I like to explore is I just think the human condition is fascinating.
Yeah.
That we have this innate ability to feel hope and joy in the face of great tragedy and pain, and I like to explore that in my book.
Yes. Yes. Well, whenever that comes out, please let me know. Okay.
I will.
I will definitely read that book. So you just, we'll stay in touch, and you can let me know when that's, coming out, and we'll do another interview and we can, promote it. So I'd love to do that for you.
Fantastic.
But anyway, everyone, The Last Suppers, go and get that book. You will love it. I'm going to have all of Mandy's links underneath this video. And thank you so much for talking with me. And, we'll talk soon, okay?
I hope so. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Everyone for listening to my interview with Mandy. That was so much fun. And guys, this book is really, really good. I'm not kidding, okay? You can see the topics that we talked about. If you've made it this far, I think we gave you just enough to want to go and run out and get this book. But anyway, thank you, Mandy. And if you've made it this far, thank you guys. Her links are underneath here. And if you liked our interview, please hit like. If you want to get updates on all my videos, please hit subscribe.